Kentucky Afield. Every week, Kentucky Afield brings you features on hunting and fishing across the state.
What a nice fish.
An opportunity to hopefully get that bird in play.
Hey, we got another one over here.
There he is. Ooh, a nice one too. Boy, he's healthy.
What do we got?
That was awesome. Got the first kill. Barely made it out in the field.
Got one big smallmouth.
Very nice.
Double point, they're in there.
There they go.
Look at that joker.
Woo!
That's a good one there.
Look at that. Whoa, this is a good one.
That's better than good, Chad.
Hello and welcome to Kentucky Afield. I'm your host, Chad Miles. Tonight, you have tuned into our annual Kentucky Wild question and answer show. Joining me, I have three biologists that are going to tell you a little bit about their programs that they're working on. And then later in the show, we're going to answer all of your questions. Hopefully, when you hear some of these programs, it will inspire you to think of some questions and submit them to us. If one of your questions is asked in the first four questions, we're going to mail you one of these really cool looking new Kentucky Wild hats. So make sure you're listening and getting your questions ready. Now let's meet our panelists. First off, we have a very familiar face, our state herpetologist, John MacGregor. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Very good. Next up, we have Courtney Hayes, who's a wildlife biologist. How you doing?
I'm good.
And then down there on the end, wearing that fancy Kentucky Wild t-shirt, we have Michael Patton, our avian biologist. How you doing?
Doing well.
I know you guys have been out in the field. We've actually sent some camera people out with you guys looking at some of the projects that you're working on, and we're going to discuss some of those first. John, you're right up first. We're going to get a couple of questions that we've already gotten regarding snake species. That's one of your favorites, right?
This time of year, it's pretty much all snakes.
All snakes. Well, the very first question pertains to copperheads. And they want to know what you look for to distinguish a copperhead from other snakes.
Well, I look for a Copperheads are found all over the state. We still have a few bluegrass counties with no records, but copperhead is a thick-bodied snake with a copper-colored head and a really skinny neck. The head's much wider than the neck, and it has broad brown crossbands. So it blends in perfectly with leaf litter. And then if you have a little baby copperhead, less than a year old, it'll have a bright greenish yellow tail tip.
Okay.
So those are the things you look for.
Okay. And tell me what snakes are commonly mistaken for copperheads, because I'm sure you get a bunch of snakes where they send you a picture, you see a picture, they go, look at this copperhead, and you go, not a copperhead.
Well, yeah, to a lot of people, if it's not in the water, it's a copperhead, and if it's in the water, it's a water moccasin.
Everything's venomous in Kentucky.
And if it shakes its tail, it's a rattlesnake. It just doesn't happen to have its rattles yet.
Oh yeah. So all of them can be confused.
So all snakes are venomous.
Also, I want to know: are all bites deadly? I mean, if you get bitten by a copperhead, what are the chances that you're going to be okay?
You know, I have looked into snake bite data statistics in Kentucky. There have been like 6 fatal snake bites in the state since the 1950s. All 6 were timber rattlesnakes, and all 6 happened in religious services, where they were passing, praise the Lord and pass me a rattlesnake.
And so they probably did not seek treatment, I'm guessing.
Right. If you seek treatment, you have basically 100% chance to survive even a rattlesnake bite.
Okay.
Copperhead bites, we've never had a fatality in Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, there have been a few around the country, but it's probably people are either really sensitive to the venom or may have had a reaction to the antivenom.
I got you. So you guys are out in the state, out and about all the time. Have you ever had a close encounter with a venomous snake? Either one of you?
We see them, but I don't see them. I'm actively looking for them, and I don't see them nearly as much as I want to.
Yeah.
So.
You're probably closer to them than you think. But if you know not to handle them, give them their distance, you don't step on them, then being around them is. I said close encounter. Really, being close to one's not a close encounter. You've got to pretty much be trying to handle one or step on one. I'm thinking, right?
Even when you step on them, they kind of go in shock too. I feel like they're like, whoa.
Yeah. Michael, have you ever had a close encounter?
I'm often looking up in the trees, so I probably have stepped over a few and not realized it.
Oh, yeah.
I've gotten lucky so far.
Yeah. As an avian biologist, you're not normally on the ground.
Yeah, only for ground nesting species,
All right, next question. Do all snakes with triangular heads or shaking tails mean they're venomous? We just talked about this a little bit.
We did, and just about all of the harmless snakes, when they're threatened, they try to look imposing, and they will flatten out that head, and they'll puff up with air. And a lot of the rodent-eating snakes shake their tails, probably to draw attention away from the rest of the snake. So the hawk goes for the wiggling tail and gives the snake a chance to get away.
Gotcha. So what is the best way? I mean, I know there's no sure way, but what's the best way to tell the difference between, in Kentucky, a venomous versus non-venomous snake?
If it has a rattle on its tail, it's a rattlesnake.
Yeah.
Cottonmouths are only in western Kentucky. They're really heavy-bodied. When they swim, they're so heavy that they're buoyant, and so they kind of float on the surface. And regular water snakes normally just have the tip of their head on the surface. So you can kind of tell by the way they swim. And if you come up on a cottonmouth, it will usually just stand its ground and throw its head back and show you that open mouth, and you can walk around the cottonmouth and it will follow you with its mouth. It's saying, stay away from me. Now, you could probably put your foot on one and roll it around, it still wouldn't bite.
Don't try that.
But don't try that.
Yeah.
I mean, they are venomous and they have a lot of venom.
Yeah. But so besides getting out of the way or just kind of holding their ground and just kind of watching you and hoping that you don't step on them, what other ways do snakes defend themselves?
Well, the rat snakes are really good. They will rear up and open their mouth and strike, and it's very imposing. A 4-foot rat snake can rear up that high off the ground, and I get a lot of photos of those.
Oh yeah.
And of course they're in houses a lot too. So you walk into Johnny's bedroom, and all of a sudden there's a snake that's reared up, looking at you.
Interesting enough, I asked about this way on how do they protect themselves other than fleeing. Or a couple of years ago, we were on this show and we found out how one of those snakes defends themselves, and it was the release of musk. We had a snake out here that the scent started to hit us. All the panels were like, whoa, what's that? And that's another way they can defend themselves.
Yeah, and the musk smells really distinctive. You can tell what kind of snake it is just by the way the musk smells.
Oh, really?
If you're good.
Yeah. I've not been musked by a snake enough to know the difference, but I know that, I can't remember what snake we had out, but I remember it had the musk. I think it was it a garter snake maybe?
Garter snakes are real pungent.
Yeah. And I could smell it, and it stays on you for a while, doesn't it?
Yeah. The champion defender of itself is the hognose snake.
Oh yeah.
And it will flatten out its neck like a cobra, puff up with air, and hiss really loud. Puts on a really good show. And if that doesn't frighten you off, then it goes into contortions, and it looks like it's been struck by lightning or bit by the devil, and it rolls around, turns upside down, opens its mouth, its tongue hangs out, it poops, and it flips over on its back, and it'll just stay there. And you can pick up a hognose snake that's playing dead like that and hang it in the bush, and it just hangs there.
Really?
But eventually, if you go away, the hognose snake will look around, nobody here, rolls over and crawls off. But apparently that's all automatic. It's nothing the snake does on purpose.
It's like fainting goats or a possum playing possum or something.
Yeah, it's just built into the nervous system. So.
I have seen hognose snakes out there. I wish they were more common because it's such a cool snake. But I've only encountered them once or twice in the wild. But if you're looking for them, I guess, and you know where to find one, they're probably not as hard to find.
They're really hard to find.
Oh, are they? Yeah. I've only seen one. And
I'm lucky to see 1 or 2 a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That, and my encounter with one was opened the barn door to walk in, and this snake started hissing like no other. And then I was like, what in the world? Flattened out its head. And then, of course, its lesson was given to me. I backed up, like, what is that? And then I realized what I was looking at. But it was pretty interesting encounter.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when you keep one in captivity, it stops doing that almost immediately. So they're good for 2 or 3 performances, and then they're done.
And your chances of seeing one really go up if you're in an area that has a whole bunch of toads.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So are they primarily a toad?
Yeah,
feeder?
they mostly eat toads.
Okay. Next question. We're kind of talking a little bit about some of the venomous snakes first. The coral snake. A coral snake is a snake that can be found in other parts of the country, and we have a snake that looks a little bit like a coral snake that sometimes can be confused. Tell me the differences there.
Coral snakes are in the deep south, and red and yellow color bands touch. And in Kentucky, we have 3 kinds of snakes that are red, black, and cream, or red, black, and white, or red, black, and yellow. The scarlet king snake, the scarlet snake, and the reddish colored milk snakes.
Okay.
And all of those, the red is separated from the cream by black. So red touch yellow, kill a fellow, red touch black, venom black. That's the old. But we do
I
not
always
have.
heard friend of Jack.
Well, I heard that first, but I thought venom black was better.
Yeah, I like that too.
So if you see a snake that has that color pattern here in Kentucky, there's coral snakes don't live in Kentucky anyway, right?
No, they don't. Never been found here, and if it's a scarlet snake or a scarlet king snake, it's a SGCN species, and we're really interested. So
Okay.
take a picture of it and send it to us.
So you said take a picture and email it or whatever. Anyone can go on our website and find any of our biologists. If you go to fw.ky.gov, what information do you want when someone submits a photo? For any of these three biologists, obviously you're working with snakes and salamanders and frogs and all that, avian for you, different. We'll hear a little more about some of your projects. I'm sure you all want the same information if someone submits a photo. What information do you want on there?
I want the date, the county, and the exact location. GPS coordinates are best, but I'll settle for a road name or an address, and the name of the observer.
Okay, so that's the information.
That's
you
kind
want
of the
on
basic.
Okay.
The basic stuff.
And I'm sure, is that the same for birds?
Yeah,
And I mean,
same thing. Locational data is definitely the most important.
because you guys are tracking how many of these species are out there, and then their range, and this gives you the ability to know when and exactly where, so that you know where you can document this species is at least currently at that point in time.
Yeah, we have species that have totally disappeared from parts of the state.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah.
You know, like the pine snake, the last one in southeast Kentucky was 1972. The last one in the Mammoth Cave area was 2006.
Wow.
And we've only had one pine snake observation that we know of since 2018 in the whole state of Kentucky. And that was in 2024. One animal in a guy's yard.
Wow.
In Callaway County.
Wow.
So we're really interested in that kind of stuff.
Well, the next question here is about, there are people that sometimes there are people that actually want more snakes in their yard. And you might be one of these individuals. I've seen you put tins out, maybe not in your yard, but I've seen you put tins out to try to attract snakes.
I've got stuff in my yard for snakes.
So what can a person do? First off, if a person does not want snakes around their house, what do they need to do? And then what does a person want to do if they actually want to learn a little more about snakes, want to observe snakes? How can you attract them?
Well, you know, people call and say, I have a snake problem. And I say, well, I can get you snakes. How many do you want? You can do things like you could have a pond in your yard. You could use landscaping timber like old railroad ties. And you could build a fountain with rocks. Anything that provides cover. You can have plant a lot of native plants or even a lot of non-native plants. And if you want to actually see the snakes, it's pretty important to lay out stuff that the snakes will get under. Like, don't throw that old license plate away. You can put it in the corner of your garden and then look under it every once in a while.
Okay.
So, shingles are really good. Old roofing tin, boards, those are things I lay out to look for snakes. The old basketball goal from our house is it's in the backyard now, leaning up against the edge of the deck. And when I turn it over, there's usually a garter snake under it.
Okay, all right.
When you go in your garden in the springtime and you're getting if you do it the best way for the wildlife, you'll leave the old dead stems. They'll stay all winter for the insects that are inside, and then when you break them off to clean up your garden in the spring, if you leave a little pile of that brush around, it's good for so many things. Every time I do it, I see garter snakes.
Oh, wow.
I have a whole little family right there, and they always are under those brush piles.
So we always talk with wildlife biologists about how to get more wildlife, and it includes don't mow as much, quit trimming, leave more brushy areas. Same thing for your garden. At the end of the year, when you're done with it, instead of mowing it down to nothing, let it grow up a little bit, and then till all of that into the soil the next year, and it'll be more beneficial for the soil, I'm thinking, as well. So, very good point. Courtney, let's talk a little bit about some of your projects. And if you have any more questions about snakes, we're going to get to those. So you can submit your questions online, and we'd love to have those for the end of the show. Any more questions for John? So. Courtney, let's talk about some of the projects you're working on. And I know that you've been involved with our Hellbender project here in the state of Kentucky, which is a fascinating project. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with that.
Yeah, Hellbenders, this is an especially timely project that we're doing right now. So Hellbenders have recently been proposed for listing as endangered by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. So they're extremely rare. They're really hard to find. They used to be found pretty much all across Kentucky. We really don't know where they still exist these days, so a lot of what we're doing is going out and trying to find them still. We follow up on historical records, or if a fisherman sends us a picture, we'll go check out the area, see if we can find it or find other ones. We are out looking for those. We've put these artificial nest boxes out that hopefully will give them some good habitat. But these animals are really picky. They need really cold, really clean water that moves swiftly. They breathe through their skin. I actually have a little Hellbender model that's life size. So these guys are huge. They are North America's largest salamander, and they breathe completely through their skin. And so if this was real, it would be flopping around a little bit more. It's very hard, but these little side flaps that they have, they breathe completely through their skin. They almost never come out of the water. They have lungs, but they don't really use them unless an emergency happens. They use it mostly to stay on the bottom. So they're on the bottom of these streams, and they are really flat. They live under rocks. You almost never see them. You shouldn't see them if the things are all there for them. But they're really hard to find because they live under these huge rocks, like the size of a car hood.
Oh, wow.
And so they build these dens in there, and we go searching in their breeding season, which is around the fall, because they're very defensive. So they will be at the front if they have eggs, and they will fight anything that tries to come in there and get their eggs. They are wonderful defenders of their young. They use these big tails. They swish them around to oxygenate in there. They keep it clean. They keep all the predators out. It's really amazing. And so because they are lacking so much, so these are a really long-lived species. They can get really old, like up to 30 years, we think, maybe even longer. But what we're seeing now is that we can find adult hellbenders sometimes, not as much as we used to be able to, but we really can't find any more breeding populations. So we're really looking for them. We start by trying to find the adults at first, which is hard enough. But to kind of help with that, we have been captive rearing eggs that we've collected from the wild at our Center for Mollusk Conservation. And when they get big enough to be released, there's been studies that show what size they need to be to have their best chance and not just get slurped up by some fish. But we will release them back into streams. So we've already done 2 releases of hellbenders throughout the past few years that we've been working on this project. So we really are asking people, if you find a hellbender and you can really tell a hellbender, so something that it gets confused with a lot is a mud puppy, but these guys don't have any gills on the outside of them. They're bigger if you find a full-size adult one.
So you were talking about they're a long-lived species. So a hellbender, if you rear them and they get to whatever length or size that they have to get to put them out in the wild, how long does it take for a hellbender to become matured enough to start having their own eggs?
Oh, that's a great question. So because they're such long-lived species, they need to be a little bit older. It's about 8 years old before they can start mating, and that's pretty young. They're not usually very successful at it that early, but they can. So yeah, about 8 years old is when they can start breeding. And
we've had a couple of releases, but we need to be out 10 years out to see if we're actually releasing animals that are successfully repopulating streams.
Yes, exactly. And we work with a lot of partners on this. No conservation can be done without partners these days, just not possible. But they have just started getting to the age where their first releases are of breeding age. So it's also really important that we do follow-up studies and not just throw the baby hellbenders out there, but go and check and see if we can refine them. And then through the years, we check and see if they're reproducing, if we can find the young ones around. And they're all inserted with these little things called pit tags. And we have scanners. It looks like a metal detector, and we go out every year and we scan the whole entire stream where we know we release them, where they know they are, and we write down everybody that we find again.
How far away can you detect a hellbender with that scanner?
Oh, not very far. So sometimes we think that we can't find some of them because they're under really thick rocks. So it's like maybe about this wide of a radius.
So
like
you gotta be
you have to be
close.
like right on the hellbender.
But you've been successful in going out and relocating hellbenders that you released with pit tags.
Yeah, so we've released 50 officially now the past few years. We've found about 10 of them still.
Okay.
They're there, they move, they're out there.
Oh yeah.
They're hard to find. They could be anywhere out in those little rock spaces.
Very cool. What other species are you working with now? And I see that you're using some other techniques and some technologies to kind of monitor for evidence of certain species. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love to study the animals that are impossible to find. I'm realizing this is a tool that we really use to help find other critters that are really hard to find and really don't want to be around people. So we use trail cameras a lot to look for things mostly that are awake at nighttime that really avoid people. So we're looking for Allegheny wood rats. We're looking for eastern spotted skunks. We are looking for snakes that are avoiding people too, pine snakes. We've used trail cameras to do that. All kinds of different, it's especially like carnivores in the winter time when they're moving around looking for food still, they can get a lot of good behavior and different locations for these animals. And over the years, the technology's been crazy.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
How many cameras can a biologist physically go out and check? I mean, you can, and that's 24/7. You've got eyes on whatever comes through there.
Yeah, and some of them can like text you even, so you can get real time what you're seeing. I haven't done any of that because a lot of the places I'm looking don't have cell phone service, but it's just crazy. Like even if you, so this camera and this camera are built to do the same thing right now. So this camera is just the most average like trail camera you could go look for, but you can modify it with a glass lens to like look for closer focus if you're trying to look for like little animals too.
Okay.
But now they're even making cameras that are specifically already done, like you don't have to modify it. It's already close focus, so you can really, depending on what animals you're looking for, you can use different trail cameras now.
And then I see that you're using some type of different, like almost bucket traps or other ways to try to encourage an animal to go right in front of the camera. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we use a lot of different methods for this, but one that's really common to use is called a drift fence. So a drift fence is basically what it sounds like. It is just two like boards that you put up, and it funnels animals out there walking around. So you go into a certain habitat for the animal you're looking for. So for example, we've been really looking for least weasels with some of our partners lately, and so we'll go into a grassland in the bluegrass region, and we'll put this drift fence up, and at the ends of the fence are two buckets, and these buckets have cameras facing down at the bottom of the buckets, and they have little holes cut in them, so an animal has to walk through, and it catches the picture of the animal right there as it walks through. And we've just seen lots of crazy cool behaviors. Even if you just see pretty common animals, it's cool to like see them eating, or like I saw some grabbing a cicada one time this past couple weeks ago when they were crazy. It's just amazing with those buckets. But sometimes even if you're not using trail cameras, you can use that same design to do stuff like live trapping animals, catching them that way, so you can actually like confirm and actually see the animal.
The use of technology is so amazing, and I know that Michael, you and I are going to talk a little bit about technology that you're using right now for migrating birds.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of different technologies that are being put in place. To be a biologist, it's kind of changing nowadays. Yes, you're going to be out there, boots on the ground, but when you have ways that can monitor and be there 24/7, that's really cool. Tell me about some of the technologies that you're using to monitor birds.
Yeah, so we're using a lot of different things. We actually do use trail cams. We put them in nest boxes so that we can get like resights on like these leg bands, so we can identify individual like peregrine falcons in this circumstance. We're also putting out radio transmitters. So I have a very, very small radio transmitter. We are currently deploying these on two different species in Kentucky, field sparrows and wood thrushes. They're both, species that are declining pretty rapidly. And these are really interesting because these are kind of key into the MODIS network. So all throughout the world right now, people are installing these MODIS stations, and they're essentially automated telemetry receivers. So they're constantly listening for these tags in the landscape, and then they essentially store that bird's information as it passes through, and it notifies the researchers that this bird that you tagged a few thousand miles away just flew right by our station. So we can get these really kind of intricate maps of how these birds are traveling. We're learning a lot about their survival, the routes that they're taking during their migration and their return back to their breeding territories.
Wow, so this is a massive database then that all these partners throughout other states and maybe even countries are all loading these tags with individual numbers, and when they put it in, they can get notified if that bird flies by any of the MODIS stations in Kentucky.
Yep.
And any bird that you tag, you get notified if it flies by any MODIS station outside of the state as well.
That's right. It's like we had wood thrushes that we tagged last year during their fall migration. We had detections down in Belize, down in Mexico, down in Costa Rica. On the way back, went through Texas along the coast. We're actually able to see these pathways that these birds are taking. We're learning a lot about these species.
So these motor stations, how many do we have in the state of Kentucky?
Right now, the department has put out 7 of them, and then a few partners are actively putting them out right now. I believe we're up to 13 statewide, and we have plans to put more in the landscape every single year.
Are they pretty spread out across the state, or are they really focused in an area?
So right now they're pretty spread out. We typically are trying to put them in places where we know we want to do work. So we're deploying these tags in the vicinity of motor stations so that we can learn when these birds are leaving and then when they're returning. So it saves us a lot of time going out, like you said, boots in the ground with these old-fashioned antennas trying to locate them. If these are listening for us, it saves us a lot of staff time that we can use on other projects.
Oh, wow. So you obviously, to put one of those on a species, a bird, or whatever you're putting it on, you have to capture it first.
We do.
So tell me a little bit about how you would capture and target a particular species of bird to put that on.
Yeah.
And how many are you putting out on a yearly basis?
It kind of depends on the project. So last year we deployed 26 of these tags out on wood thrushes, and we put out, I believe, 16 on field sparrows. This year we had a slightly diminished effort. We put out 16 wood thrush tags and then 10 field sparrow tags. But what we do is we try to find the individuals. We often key on them singing, and then we'll try to stealthily get up to them, and we'll set up these mist nets. They're really fine mesh nets, and we'll put speakers on either sides of the nets, and we'll lure them in with their songs. And as soon as it flies over my net, I start playing the speaker to the other side, and it'll fly over the net again, and it'll keep going back and forth until eventually it'll hit the net. And then we'll take the bird out, we'll get a lot of measurements, we'll sex the bird, we'll age the bird, we'll band the bird with those little bands just so we can see them, and if they're ever recaptured somewhere else, we know who that individual is. And then we really delicately, we put on that little backpack transmitter.
And how long does one of those transmitters last before the battery goes dead or it quits sending a signal?
It depends on the size. Generally, anywhere from 400 days to 700 days. So we get a lot of information. We get a few migrations out of it, hopefully. So.
Very, very cool. So it's amazing because all of you guys are now using new technologies that are spinning, and we still haven't found Bigfoot. So something telling me that with all this technology we're using and all these cameras, that still haven't found Bigfoot.
I'd love to throw a transmitter on Bigfoot if we can make it happen.
What size would a backpack be for Bigfoot?
It'd be pretty good.
It's amazing. Some of the other interesting things that I know you're working on is also some birds of prey. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about some of those birds and species that you have interest in knowing more about from the public, and why you need more information.
Yeah, so there's 3 main species right now that we're working on. It's the bald eagle, peregrine falcon, and then barn owls. So bald eagles, we just really do surveys right now for nests. So we go out every year, we survey 1/3 of the state with a helicopter. We go out, we check up on nests that people have called in or emailed us about. So if you found a bald eagle nest, please get a point and email or call us so that we can add it to our inventory and we can add it to our survey efforts. And we also do a midwinter eagle survey where biologists are going out and they're counting every single eagle that they can see. And all this is just to kind of keep tabs on the population. You know, bald eagles were functionally extinct in Kentucky in the 60s, right? Mm-hmm. With the banning of DDT and then reintroduction programs like Kentucky Fish and Wildlife did back in the day, the population's really come back to the point where they're delisted back in 2007. But we're just trying to make sure that that population stays on an upward trajectory and doesn't start dipping again. We're also working with peregrine falcons. They're still an incredibly rare species in Kentucky. Had a similar issues with DDT like the bald eagle. But right now we only have 20 nesting pairs that we know about in the whole entire state. So that's a species we're actively looking at them, we're actively monitoring them, trying to find new birds, and just making sure that that population continues to stay steady. Because with only 20 nesting individuals, you know, that can blink out, unfortunately, if we're not careful.
So a peregrine falcon, if someone were to see a bird that they think, man, that might be a peregrine falcon, first off, it's not going to be really easy to get a great identifying photo, but how can they identify a peregrine falcon versus one of the other birds of prey that you may confuse it with?
Yeah, so as far as you've seen them, peregrine falcons are generally not going to be in your backyard. They're going to be in habitats, you know, we find them in power plants, underneath bridges, on top of large skyscrapers. They're birds that, you know, historically liked to live on cliff lines. So they really like that tall, steep drop. If you see something that looks like a peregrine falcon in your backyard, more than likely it's a Cooper's hawk. Yeah. But this is one of those circumstances. You can get a picture, send it to me, I will identify it to you, and I'll get very excited if it is a peregrine falcon.
Very cool. So it's really, you guys all have your passions, you've got your areas of expertise, and for whatever reason you guys have decided to study what you've decided to study. I'm going to go through and talk to each of you. John, what would be the ultimate day for you tomorrow? What species in Kentucky would you go out and find tomorrow and you go, man, this capped it off, this was the best day possible?
Well, I have never in my life found a live scarlet snake.
Never.
And I found a couple of dead ones,
okay.
run over, but
Yeah. Tomorrow, if you went out in the field and found that, you'd be like, well, that was my best day in the field for a while.
yep, I'd be ready for my wings.
So hopefully somebody can send you some pictures and see them out in the wild and give you an idea of where to
A
locate.
couple of years ago, someone sent a picture of one that was in a swimming pool in Christian County.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty exciting. I was ready to grab my beach towel and head
Coming
for
in with your
Christian County.
flip-flops and hang out
Yeah.
in Christian County for a while. Courtney, what species would be like your ultimate tomorrow if you were out in the field and you saw it, you go, wow, this was a great day?
Well, I have two, but only because one scenario I know will happen one day, and one might not ever happen to me, and I would be just over the moon if it did. But the first one I'll say is an eastern spotted skunk. I would love one day to be able to have one in my hand and actually see him out there. They're the most amazing little critters, and they're so hard to find. But the other one that might not happen to me that I would just pass away is the glass lizards that we have here in Kentucky. So these lizards don't have any legs. Most people would probably confuse them for a snake, but they live almost completely underground all the time. It's so rare to ever see one out and about. It would just be amazing if I saw a glass lizard one day.
See, that's so cool, these passions that you guys have, that however you guys got this passion to go out and look for these particular species. I've never seen a glass lizard. I don't know if I've ever heard of a glass lizard. To know that you're that passionate about it is really cool. All right, Michael, what is the species tomorrow that would be on your number one hit list to find?
Well, Courtney set a precedent of 2, so I'm going to say 2 as well.
Okay.
The first one's going to be loggerhead shrike. Songbird, they used to be very common. They're declining very, very rapidly, and they're just not on the landscape anymore.
Okay.
They're still around, but they're extremely hard to find. And if I can capture one and put leg bands on it so we can learn more about it, I would just be over the moon. They're extremely difficult to capture as well. So,
Okay.
And then the second one's going to be the golden wing warbler. Very, very small songbird, really only found in the southeastern Kentucky, down in the Cumberland Mountain area. Extremely rare. I've been miles on the ground trying to find these birds, and we come across a few of them. So if we could find some more, I would love that.
Very cool. So I could have never guessed these 3 answers. I would have thought they'd been something totally different. Some big bird of prey. I would have thought you'd have said, but no, you're looking for these little songbirds.
Big birds are easier to find.
What about you, Chad?
Man,
Non-game animals only.
Yeah.
Non-game animals. That is a good question. It would probably be some of these snake species, just because I get so many questions about snakes. I get questions on snakes almost every single day.
Yeah.
People are asking about, hey, I saw this snake. What do you think this is? And I'm like, I'm not your guy, but I can give you my best guess. I know we have a book for that, don't we? We have a book that people can, and I reference pages of that book.
They can download it for free.
Download it for free, and I have that saved on my phone because of all the snake species I get. But I have seen a water moccasin, but it was at Reelfoot Lake. I don't think I was in Kentucky. I don't think I've ever seen a water moccasin in Kentucky. I saw one in Reelfoot Lake, but I think I was in Tennessee. So that would be something that would be pretty cool. And then I've had that one encounter with the hognose snake. I would love to run upon another hognose snake, because they're just such crazy snakes. The way they go through all of I've seen videos of people out encountering them, the way they roll over and play dead. And you try to flip them back over right side up, and they flip back up upside down and throw their tongue out. The whole parade is just really cool. So that, I guess it would probably be one of those.
Yeah.
That, and 11-pound, 15.5-ounce smallmouth bass, which would be the world record. That would have to be. I know that's a game species.
Fair enough. I got 2. Michael got 2.
Would
you like to add one, John?
And I think that one will never be seen, not by me or anybody else either. So, well, hey, we've kind of went over some of your projects you're working on. So let's see if we're getting some questions start to come through, because today we want to do this show slightly different. Later on, let us know what you think. We always open the floor up at the beginning for questions, and this time we wanted to let our biologists kind of talk about some things that you may known something about these projects. You may have never heard of these projects. And just kind of gives the viewers out there a little bit of insights into what our biologists are interested in and what you're working on. Because you guys have named a lot of species that we would love to get more information on. If you have a trail camera, if you have a phone, and you see a species that you think might be one of these species or any other species you want to know more about, this is your opportunity to submit those photos and engage with our biologists. So question one is about pygmy rattlesnakes. So I guess this is you, Don. Pygmy rattlesnakes. Are they confirmed only in the land between the lakes region? I'm quite confident that they observed one in Henderson County. Tell me a little bit about pygmy rattlesnakes.
Probably not.
Okay.
But take a picture of it. We know them from Trigg County at LBL and Callaway County, which that's where Murray is.
Okay.
In fact, we have those bucket traps set up right now through Murray State University, and I just got an email today with a picture of a pygmy rattlesnake that was crawling underneath one of those buckets.
Oh wow! So you got a picture today of somebody?
Got a picture today.
Somebody submitted a picture, and it was a recent photo.
Yeah.
So how common are the pygmy rattlesnakes down there in that area?
They're extremely rare.
Okay.
The last one I saw in Kentucky was, I think, 1976.
Wow.
So,
well, that is rare.
but if I lived in Callaway County, I probably would have seen a couple since then.
Wow. Okay. Next question. What are some endangered bird species that they should be looking for in the Daniel Boone National Forest area? So tell me some bird species that if you would like, hey, I'd love to know if you find one of these, especially in the Daniel Boone area.
Yeah, so as far as federally listed endangered, we really do not have any in the Daniel Boone anymore. Back in the day, there would have been red cockaded woodpeckers, but they have been extirpated or they're now extinct in Kentucky. But there are a lot of birds that we would call like species of greatest conservation need that occur in Daniel Boone. Things like eastern whippoorwills, chuck-will's widows. We have like Swainson's warblers. So there's a lot of rare birds that are declining, but none that are federally endangered.
So how many different species of whippoorwill are there? You just mentioned, you said eastern whippoorwill?
So in the eastern United States, so in Kentucky, we have just the eastern whippoorwill. There's
so if
a
you
few
hear a whippoorwill, it's that particular species.
That one,
it's that one and one only. I thought, when you said that, I thought, man, I might not be aware there may actually be more than one species.
Yep, in Kentucky, we have just the eastern.
Eastern whippoorwills, okay. And you know,
or a Chuck-will's will.
Or a Chuck-will's.
Sounds real similar.
It does, but there's an extra note there. You just got to listen for it.
Oh, so there's another bird that makes a sound very similar to
Very similar, yes. It's a little bit different, but if you play them, kind of one after another, like on your phone or on the computer, you can pick up. They are distinct.
So I'm assuming that you just made me think that when I'm out at Lake Cumberland nighttime fishing and I hear a whippoorwill, am I hearing whippoorwills or is it potentially something different?
It could potentially be a Chuck-will's widow.
So whatever these birds are, they're the most persistent because when they start, they'll make that sound like, really? Are you going to do this all night long, nonstop? It's like, what are they making the sound for? Are they attracting a mate? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, so what they're doing, especially if you're out on like a full moon on the lake, that's when they're going to be singing. They're defending their territories, and it's also letting their mates or potential mates know that I had really good. You should come mate with me.
Okay. So are they pretty defensive of their territories?
Yes. And that's
am I hearing males or females or both?
You're mostly hearing males. Females will make sounds, but they're not going to be nearly as vocal as the males. But this is how, like we're talking about the transmitters, we're actually partnering with the University of Kentucky right now to deploy satellite tags on eastern whippoorwills, and that's how we're actually capturing them. We're using that defensive behavior to lure them into these same mistats we're using for wood thrushes and for field sparrows by playing those songs, getting them kind of riled up, and then we capture them, put a transmitter on, and release them.
That's very cool. Yeah. Well, I'm shocked that they're on decline because they're persistent.
They are persistent, but they are declining fairly rapidly. When they start their mating
song, man, it goes on like for hours.
Well, they know you're trying to sleep or something like that, generally.
Man, I love hearing them. It's one of those things you're like, man, that is going on and on and on. So that was our first two questions. We got two more to go. Our first four questions that we asked tonight and get answers, you're going to receive one of these new Kentucky Wild caps. So if your question has been asked, you're going to be getting this cap, and we're going to reach out to you later on after the show. And if the next two questions, that are asked. Whoever submitted that question is going to get one of these caps. So that next question, number 3, why have hellbenders disappeared, and what can Kentuckians do to help keep hellbenders safe? Are they more common in other states? So this is a 2 or 3 part question. A little bit more about hellbenders. Why are they disappearing?
Well, there's not any one reason. There's a whole big bad storm of things that really worked against them. So water quality being a big one, sedimentation. So a lot of farming, when like the runoff from the chemicals of the farming aren't being captured anymore because we've cut the trees that are around the stream and cut the plants that are there that really absorb those nutrients and keep them out of the water. So that stuff goes in the water, the sediment runs down more because there's not plants there to capture it, and it fills up their dens, the sediment, and they have to work much harder to keep it out. So eventually it just isn't worth it anymore, or they can't keep up. There's still gravel mining that occurs in Kentucky, so that directly rips up their habitat. There's, of course, modifying the habitat, getting like modifying streams or anything like that. What was the next part of the question?
They wanted to know what they can do, and then how common are they in other states?
So what you can do is really make a good riparian area. If you have, especially if you have stream access on your property, that is the biggest benefit you can have to hellbenders, is to really restore that riparian area and keep cattle and all that sedimentation out of the water that will dig up the habitat. So really what, if they're common in other states, that was the last question. North Carolina has a very good population, but range-wide they've declined by, we think, at least 80%. Wow. But North Carolina had a stronghold. It's still in the air how it is after the hurricane came through there, but the other states around, so this is a largely Appalachian species, and they call it the canary in the coal mine because they're so sensitive. So range-wide and like just across the United States, we've altered habitat so much, and we can really see it with the hellbenders disappearing. They're one of the first things that'll disappear. So.
Wow, that's amazing, because they are such a cool species, but you'd like for more people to have more interaction. But at this point in time, because they are so close to being potentially listed as endangered, you want to make sure that you're not down there disturbing a hellbender's nest. So, you know, if you see one really cool, send us some information on it, but just make sure you're not disturbing it, right?
They could also join Kentucky Wild and help support those efforts.
Oh, yeah, because we've taken people with Kentucky Wild out, and for some of the release of these hellbenders, we did a release. So there's a whole lot of different things you can do. Kentucky Wild is a great program that really works with species that we don't hunt and fish for here in the state of Kentucky. If you're an outdoors enthusiast, you want to know more about other programs that some of these biologists are working on, may want to participate in field days. There's all kinds of different reasons to join Kentucky Wild. So if someone wanted to join Kentucky Wild, how would they do that?
You can join Kentucky Wild at one of our in-person events that we have. So for instance, we'll be at the State Fair. You can stop by the Kentucky Wild booth and sign up to be a member there. A $35 membership gets you these fancy little t-shirts this year, as well as supporting conservation and the chances to come out and join us on these member experiences. You can also go to our website, fw.ky.gov/kywild, and you can sign up there, and we will mail you your t-shirt.
Okay. And some of these events, we have some really cool merchandise. This hat, we're going to give 4 of these away, but they can also be purchased at any of our mobile pop-ups or the Kentucky State Fair. And we have other shirts. I know there's a Hellbender specific t-shirt that has been in the past. I know we've had that out. So there's some pretty cool shirts. When I wear these shirts, people that are outdoors people sometimes will say, hey, I know what that is on your shirt. And so they got butterflies and monarch shirts, and so there's all kinds of those. All right, the next question here. Let's see. Question number 4. Please talk about Kentucky Wild, how it is and how it works. We just talked a little bit about that. So I didn't realize that was going to be the next question. We jumped the gun a little bit. So tell me a little bit about what programs that each of you have had where people could go out with you in the field that you drew off the list of Kentucky Wild participants. So have you had a program like that?
Every year we have a, it's a herp hike down at Green River Wildlife Management Area, and we'll have maybe 10 people with their family members, and we go down and spend a whole day turning over logs in the woods, and mostly it's for salamanders.
Okay.
But we find snakes and frogs.
Okay.
And Brian Gray, who used to be a biologist in that area, sets turtle traps, and so we catch painted turtles and snapping turtles, and it's a whole day of pretty neat stuff.
Oh, cool. And and you guys put that out there to Kentucky Wild members to
Yeah.
join that? Okay. All right, Courtney, tell me a little bit about what you have in the field that Kentucky Wild members may get a chance to participate with.
I've done a couple different events in my time here at Fish and Wildlife with Kentucky Wild. So two that are really popular that we really enjoy doing is monarch tagging every year in September. When the monarchs are migrating down to Mexico, we bring members out, usually with their family member as well, and we will help teach them how to do it, and then we just set people loose and they run through the fields and catch butterflies, put their little stickers on them, and let them go to Mexico. And then we recently did one that we don't do very often, but it is really amazing, and the look on everybody's face getting to do it is we had a bat capture event. So we went out and we had them do an emergence count where they were counting the bats leaving their roost tree, and then we put up a mist net, much like with the birds, almost exactly like with the birds, except we're catching bats at nighttime. And so we put them up and we were able to show them bats up close and how small they are and not really terrifying. So
Very cool. And you were talking about putting a sticker on there. Do those stickers, are they have an identifying number, or are they also a way they can be tracked much like the backpacks? Can you track those
that
as
is
well?
a great question. So the stickers we use are literally just a sticker, but they do have a unique number and letter code on it. So
Okay.
when the animal is found in Mexico, people can turn it in and they actually get some cash in exchange for it.
Oh, wow.
And then that code will be reported back to us knowing where we tagged it from. We have had some from Kentucky be found down in Mexico before, so that's really cool. But actually, Modus is starting to make little tags that are very small. We haven't used them yet, but you can also put them on monarchs, and that's an effort that people are trying to do right now, is to passively capture where the monarchs are.
Yeah, Modus is neat because it can be literally any type of animal. It doesn't have to be a bird. It can be bats. It can be butterflies. It can be dragonflies.
Wow.
You know,
Anything that flies, and how close you got to get to one of these towers for it to pick it up?
It depends on kind of setup you have, but generally it's a little bit under 10 miles.
Oh,
So-
that's got a pretty wide range. Then. Okay, very cool. What programs have you had that have been open to Kentucky Wild?
We do a few different things. I've taken folks out to band peregrine falcon chicks at one of the LG&E power plants. We check American kestrel nesting success at Clay WMA. So we take a group out and we look in these kestrel boxes that are up on power poles, and we hoist a camera up there, and folks help us do that, and they can help us age the birds and see what their productivity is like. And then we also have a songbird banding day where folks can come out. We put up a bunch of mist nets, catch a bunch of songbirds. We talk about how to identify them and how we work them up, and all kind of the recapture science that goes along with that.
Very, very interesting. Hey, I know that anytime I see you bring a big piece of Tupperware to these shows, I know you brought something. So
I've got a couple of things.
Oh, you got a couple of things. Let's see what you brought here.
I get calls all the time about people finding a shed snake skin
Okay.
in their house, and I just wanted to show people this is a skin from a timber rattlesnake.
Okay.
A lot of times with snakes, you can actually see the pattern that was on the snake by looking at the skin. So if you find a shed skin and you're concerned about it, if you fold it up and put it in an envelope and send it to Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, I can identify
Not the whole snake, just the shed.
Just the shed skin. I just wanted to point that out.
Very cool. I didn't know you had. So you have a live snake and a shed with you today, huh?
Well, it was a live rattlesnake, but it got away.
Partially, you kept part of it, huh?
It just left a skin on it.
This is not a rattlesnake. Please don't touch
I'm assuming
rattlesnakes.
this is not a rattlesnake you have here. Oh, wow.
No, this is
Very pretty snake, though.
this is one of the snakes that gets mistaken for a copperhead.
Okay.
Because it's found away from water and it has a pattern on it.
Okay, yeah.
This is actually this is an eastern milk snake. It's a pretty common species all through eastern Kentucky in the bluegrass, and they're also in western Kentucky, but the ones in the western part of the state tend to be red rather than brown like this. And this guy's musking on me right now.
Oh, he is.
And I can smell that. And I can tell it's a milk snake just from that odor.
I can tell it's a milk snake too because you're holding it.
These are pretty common in the bluegrass.
And I notice the bottom of it has a very unique pattern on it too.
Yeah, a lot of times you have to look at more than one thing to identify a snake. But, milk snakes and corn snakes both have this like checkerboard black and white belly, and that's a pretty good field character.
Now, how old is that snake right there?
This has been here for a long time. This is really big for a milk snake.
Okay.
I would say this one is probably at least 10 or 12 years old, maybe older.
Now, is that snake something that can be seen here at Salado Center, or is this
this is a Salado Center snake.
Okay, so if you ever want to see all of these species of snakes, just about that we've talked about, they have a pretty good representation of snakes here at the Salado Wildlife Education Center. Live snakes you can see, right?
Yeah, they do, and they do programs, and usually they're snakes that can be handled. But like tonight, they had just fed everything the other day. Okay. And I was intending to go out this weekend and catch a nice black racer that might rip a hole in my arm or something. But I didn't get around to doing that, so I had to borrow this one. So this guy's pretty tame. But a milk snake is one of those snakes that's accused of taking milk from cows. No snake does that. Okay. Snakes don't have the right mouth part.
But actually, the name stayed. It stuck. Any other reason? Stayed. That's the only reason they're called a milk snake?
That's the main reason. And the other snake that's accused of that is the rat snake, which people call that a cow sucker.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or a cow snake. And I grew up in Ohio, and the milk snake was the one that they thought took milk from cows. Then I moved down to Kentucky, and people were telling me about cow suckers. I've never heard of a cow sucker.
I've heard about that.
But I learned. I think I'd been here 3 days before I found out what a cow sucker was.
So if you're ever somewhere and someone is holding a snake, and it's a non-venomous snake for display like this here at Salado Center, there's a certain way that when you hold that snake, that you're always moving from its head back when you're handling that snake, right, and not going against the scales, right?
Why just let the snake crawl where it wants to crawl?
Yeah.
And even a wild, freshly caught snake usually will calm down.
Oh, okay.
But this guy he's holding on to me. See, he's been handled by enough people. He knows what it's like to be dropped.
Oh, yeah. He's avoiding that, huh? Yeah. He's not a constrictor. He's just holding on for safety reasons.
But he is a constrictor.
He is a constrictor. Okay. Yeah. So that snake catches its prey, and
milk snakes eat most of the mice.
Okay. And that's how he grabs them, holds onto them, constrict them.
Yeah, he will trail like a meadow vole or a field mouse into its burrow and track it down and catch it, and then either press it against the side of its burrow or throw a coil in it.
This snake looks very vibrant in color. Are they all like that, or is this recently shed? I mean, this thing
probably recently shed.
It's really pretty. I mean, it's just very vibrant.
Snakes are really pretty.
Right? Yeah, very.
When I was a kid, I fell in love with snakes.
Made a career out of it.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Okay, well, I'll put it back.
Very, very cool. Well, I appreciate you. I love when people bring things in, show and tell here. So I appreciate you bringing.
I appreciate Jules at the Salado Center for letting me borrow this.
Oh yeah.
So what I realize this, but I broke my arm about 2 months ago.
Oh.
And I was concerned. I had 3 snakes at home that I'd had for 10 to 20 years. Okay. And I was afraid I wouldn't be able to take care of them.
So what 3 snakes did you have? What 3 snake species did you have at your house?
Well, I had a rat snake, a black king snake, and what's called a white oak snake, which is a rat snake from Florida. Okay. That came from a bat meeting that I went to.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, I mean, I had those things for a long time.
Oh yeah, very, very cool.
So I donated them to University of Kentucky for pathology labs.
So I have a question here that came in. I'm trying to figure out what this is. It says, can you talk about salamanders and lizards that I think is a siren? Is there a lizard or salamander that makes a sound like a siren?
Well, a siren is it's a salamander that lives in swamps.
Okay.
And ponds in western Kentucky.
And the name of the actual salamander is actually called a siren?
Yeah, it's called the lesser siren.
Okay.
And it's a big salamander. They get this big. They have 2 front legs and bushy gills.
Okay.
And no back legs.
Okay.
And they live in ditches and ponds, and they're really neat.
Have you ever ran into one of those?
I have not, just in captivity.
Okay, just in captivity. Now, he was saying this big. I mean, how close? It's obviously, you said that the Hellbender was the largest salamander, but do they get fairly close in size?
Yeah, they're fairly close.
Okay.
It's just,
In length.
yeah,
In length, yeah, just
but
not-
the Hellbenders are going to be wider.
All right.
Hellbenders can eat sirens for breakfast.
Oh, we need to put that on our Hellbender shirts. My Hellbender can eat your siren for breakfast. All right, next question here is about, one of you mentioned a long-tailed weasel. Tell me a little bit about a long-tailed weasel and what's cool about them, unique, and why we're interested in them.
So long-tailed weasels are actually pretty common. Those ones can be found pretty much all over the state. A weasel that we're really interested that is not the long-tailed weasel is called the least weasel. So they're really related, except for the least weasel, as you can infer from the name, is much smaller than them.
Okay.
And they're found in quite different habitats. They can, a long-tailed weasel can be pretty much anywhere, so you can still find them in grassland areas, but you can also find them in the woods. But least weasels are like this big. They're tiny.
What do each of those species, what do they mainly feed on?
So they are carnivores, and they are mostly going to feed on small rodents, bugs, whatever they can fit in their mouth,
Okay.
but a lot lot of rodents.
Okay.
And they are vicious. For their size, they can take down things that are much bigger than them.
Wow, so it's a good thing they're small, huh?
Yeah.
You'd feel like a honey badger here in Kentucky.
And when I say they're vicious, they're not dangerous to you. I just mean they can take down big prey.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're gonna defend themselves against
Yeah.
other like-sized animals. Right?
And it's amazing with the least weasels because we just can't find them. We don't have records of them. Most of our records come from cats, people's cats who have caught them while they're out, or ones that have been found in people's pools. We often try to trap for them. We can't. They're just too smart.
Really? Very interesting. So that's a least weasel, and that's something that we are trying to monitor. So if you see one, you want documentation of that, right?
Yeah, they're mostly in the bluegrass region, and I've gone to people's houses and picked one up that they've sent me a picture, and I'm like, yes, that is one. I'm going to come get it. So, yeah, we were really looking for records of those.
Very cool. The next question is about a species I know we're interested in as well, and it's about owls. Tell me about the species of owls that we have in Kentucky, what we're doing to kind of monitor their populations, and what information that if a viewer out there sees one of these owls, what information you might be looking for.
Yeah, so most of our owl species are doing fairly well, like barred owls, great horned owls, eastern screech owls. Populations are very stable. The barn owl, the American barn owl now, was renamed recently. That's a species that we're actively looking for. And not too long ago, you could almost not find one in Kentucky. Through various efforts about installing nest boxes throughout the state, as well as improving habitat in the areas where they should be, the population is starting to come back. But that's something that if folks have barn owl sightings, or they have a barn owl in their barn or in their grain silo, we would love to know about it.
And that's we've had this conversation several years ago on when we were actually actively going out and trying to find some of these barn owls. That there's a really unique way to know if you have a barn owl, and that is by finding something they leave behind, right?
Yes, yeah. So if you go into like your tobacco barn or something like that, and you find little black football-shaped objects on the ground, and like a lot of them, they're called pellets. Essentially, it's regurgitated material from rodents, their prey that they can't digest. So instead of they just kind of spit them up essentially.
So they eat a rodent, they pull it apart, they eat it. When they get it down, their body, then their stomachs will take all the non-digestible materials, wad it up in the small pellet.
Yep.
And then
so they don't actually tear them apart. They eat everything.
Oh, they eat it
right.
all.
So they have all that bone, all that fur. You can't pull nutrients out of that, so it gets put put right back on the ground. Aren't going to be
Wow,
fun. Yeah.
that's a pretty effective way to eat and digest your materials.
Yes,
right?
and it's really nice for trying to find these owls. I can walk into a bar and be like, yeah, they're here.
Yeah, you know for sure if they're there if you're
Yeah.
seeing those pellets, right?
Yes, and I should say all owls do this, but only inside of buildings. Generally, it's going to be barn owls.
Okay, very cool. So that's a very unique way to be able to locate one of those. Do any of you guys have any other items that you brought that you wanted to showcase before we ask our last question? Did you get to all of your show and tell items?
Yeah.
Okay, our last question. What type of water do hellbenders live in? Cold streams or warmer, still or small moving river style streams?
They are going to be in cold water.
Okay.
It's going to be cold, and it can range from size of a river to a creek. So the size isn't really that important. It's more the habitat within that creek or stream. So they need large boulders, the adults do, but not just that. They also need small little cobbly areas because the young don't live under these big rocks. They live in the little areas between all the cobble rocks. So it's got to have a good mix of different habitat, but it does need to be cold because it holds more oxygen if it's cold.
And what do they primarily eat, both in a youth state as well as an adult hellbender?
Hellbenders largely eat crayfish. When they're young, they mostly eat like worms or bugs that they can catch or small crayfish, but adult hellbenders largely eat crayfish or small like shiners or minnows or something like that, and they can also eat each other sometimes.
Oh, wow. You said they were, during the
They'll defend.
certain time of year, they were very
Don't
defensive.
touch my eggs.
When the sirens are gone, then they eat.
I was going to say, you mentioned hellbenders would eat sirens for breakfast. Well, there you go. That sounds like not only would they, but they're willing. That's pretty cool. Well, hey, this has been a very informative show for me. I feel like I learned a few things. Hopefully your viewers out there, they also learned a few things. If you want to know more, we're actually going to be at the State Fair. On the 14th of August is Kentucky Afield Day at the State Fair. So come out and check us out. And then any of you guys working at the State Fair this year?
I will be there along with my coworkers. We're doing a bat themed for Kentucky Wild Day, so we'll be there talking about bats.
All right, fantastic. So which day are you going to be there?
I believe it's the 19th.
Okay, so August the 19th. So if you have any more questions for these panelists, you can reach out to us, call our info center, and they'll give you the email address. I would love to get pictures if you have any pictures of any species we talked about today. And if you want to know more about Kentucky Wild, you can go to fw.ky.gov/KY Wild and get more information about Kentucky Wild. It might be for you. $35 membership comes with a t-shirt, and you can also sign up at the State Fair. So it's been a great show. Hopefully you're getting outdoors. This heat needs to pass so that we can be more comfortable outdoors, but get out and enjoy yourselves. And remember, hunting and fishing on private property is a privilege. Always ask permission and thank the landowner. I'm your host, Chad Miles, and hope to see you in the woods or on the water.